Back everyone. There we have voice. And I think this works better, doesn't it? Much better. So this afternoon we're going to be looking at diabetes and weight loss. And then we're going to have a very short break because we have to set a few things up here for our natural remedies demonstration. So before we begin, let us ask God to teach us this afternoon. Father in heaven, we come before you to thank you for this body you've given us. We thank you for the Natural Remedies seminar this week to teach us how to put our bodies in better working condition, and if they're not well, even how we can bring about healing. Teach us, we pray, in the name of Jesus. Amen. I'm not sure what the current figures are in the US, but I know in Australia there are 500 new diabetics diagnosed every day in Australia. That's a bit scary, isn't it? So if we want to talk about a pandemic, I think we'd have to call it diabetes, is that right? Oh, by the way, did you know that COVID is killer number 38th? Number one is heart disease, and yet where's the attention's going to the wrong spot. Even medicine acknowledges that diabetes is a lifestyle disease. In fact, there was no mention of diabetes in Hippocrates' writings. Hippocrates was 400 years BC. There was no diabetes, none at all. In fact, diabetes didn't really appear until sugar was refined. And the first time diabetes mellitus, and by the way, diabetes mellitus means sweet urine. So the glucose is spilling out into the urine. Diabetes mellitus, sweet urine, it was first documented just before the Black Plague, and it only really was in the very wealthy, because only the wealthy could afford the refined sugar. But it's certainly a worldwide pandemic, diabetes today, and yet it can be conquered, and it can be conquered quite easily. But am I talking about type 1 diabetes or type 2? My answer to that is yes. Because we've seen both conquered. It's a lot harder to conquer type 1 diabetes because it's damage in the cells that create that produce the insulin. So I'd like to begin by having a look at some of the things that are influencing or causing diabetes. And to do that, we're going to do assessment on what many people eat today. It's called carbohydrates. Very popular food, and the reason carbohydrates are very popular is because they're fast and they're just there. And we've got such a fast society today that that's what people want. In fact, we had a lady one day, she was a guest, she said, "Barbara, you don't understand, I don't cook. I don't cook." I said, my thought was to say to her, "Well, do you eat?" And that might have sounded a little rude. But the fact is that food is just so freely available, isn't it? So let's have a look at the fastest foods. Bread. Bread shops abound. Cereal. There's a whole aisle in the supermarket devoted to bread, and there's a whole aisle devoted to cereal. So we know that they are very popular foods. And then there's the cakes, biscuits, cookies, donuts, bagels, muffins, we'll say cakes, etc. Otherwise, the list would take up the whole board. Another fast food is pizza. Lots of pizza shops or frozen pizzas, and pasta. growing up as a child, I didn't know what pasta and pizza were. In her book Gut and Psychology, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she investigates the traditional way that a lot of people ate. And did you know that in Italy, these foods aren't daily foods? These foods are almost, foods to eat on an occasion. You know what the traditional food always was thick minestrone soup. It was just quick and it was the most common food. And that's a lot easier to make, especially when you've got a fuel stove and it's just popping on the corner. There's a bit of work to make these. Rice is another common carbohydrate. Potatoes. We call them potato chips. I think you call them French fries in the US. And sugar. Sugar is the ultimate pure carbohydrate. Now, in the gastrointestinal tract, all of these foods break down to glucose. And yes, glucose is the number one fuel used by every cell in the body. So I'm going to take you into the inside workings of the cell to show you what happens to glucose. So here's the cell. The glucose gets into the cell under the action of insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose into the cell. Now, when the glucose gets into the cell, it goes through a 20-step pathway. This 20-step pathway delivers to us 2 units of energy. That's why we eat, isn't it? Now, the end result of that 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose. It's called pyruvate. And pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into the next section. It's an 8-step pathway, but this 8-step pathway has a nickname. It's called the powerhouse of the cell. And the reason is that this 8-step pathway, it delivers 36 units of energy. So the question, of course, arises, how come a 20-step pathway only gives 2 units of energy and the 8-step pathway gives 36? The difference is oxygen. This is an oxygenated pathway. This pathway here, no oxygen. It produces energy by the process of fermentation. In my next few lectures, we're going to be going into that pathway a few times because it explains so much in various areas. What a difference oxygen makes. Are you helping your body get more oxygen by breathing through your nose and occasionally holding your breath? But we're looking at the journey of glucose. So number 1, the glucose gets sent to the cell to be burnt as fuel. But on a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got a lot of glucose left over. And so the body now stores it like a little bunch of grapes. And they're little molecules of glucose. And their name is glycogen. Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores. And that's why I could have my main meals at breakfast and lunch yesterday, wake up early, there's nothing in my stomach, and yet I'm going for my high-intensity walk and run. Where do I get the energy from? It's my glycogen stores. Quick-release glucose stores already sitting in your muscle cell, and as soon as you start moving your body, it just plucks them, sends them down the pathway, plucks them, sends them down the pathway. What an amazing process. Best time to exercise is before breakfast, because if you exercise after breakfast, you're going to cause a war between your working muscles and your stomach. Because your stomach's busy digesting and it's going to be called to your muscles, and the muscles will say, we need it, and the stomach's going to say, no, it's ours, we need all that energy to digest. So if you're going to do intense physical workout, the best time is to wait about an hour and a half after you've eaten. So we're looking at the journey of glucose. So we're looking at this high carbohydrate diet, which releases a lot of glucose. Some of it's sent down the energy pathways in the cell. Leftovers are sent to be stored as glycogen, but the cell can only store so much glycogen. We've still got excess. And as I mentioned this morning, the third place, the most amazing fuel depot in the human body, is fat. You see, fat doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat? It's the carbs. Now, carbs are not bad. What a relief. We like them. It's only when they're overdone and refined. And many today, especially vegetarians, because vegetarians are getting just as much diabetes as meat eaters. Because I find a lot of vegetarians stop the meat and just eat more bread and more pasta. And there are many products that people eat that are a combination of the wheat and the sugar. Now, I want you to hold on to this information, because as we look at diabetes, you're going to see the value of glycogen. Those quick release glucose stores already sitting in the muscle cell. And it's like it's in a prison. It can only be used by the muscle cell. But your liver can also store glycogen, and that glycogen can go all around the body. Can be used by my brain, can be used by my liver, can be used by my muscles if it doesn't have enough of this. But I'd like to point out what's happening with what has happened with the grain that most bread is made from, most cereals, cakes, all of those, pizzas, pastas. They're all made out of the hybridised wheat. And it was in the 1950s that the wheat was hybridised. I appreciate Dr. William Davis, in his book The Wheat Belly, he gives the history of what has happened to the wheat. And what they did to the wheat was they changed the structure. They didn't mean to change the structure, but what they did was they wanted to create a plant with a high yield of grain. And they did it to help the starvation crisis in Africa, in Mexico, in India. And no one, of course, would object to that. But what happened in this changing of the wheat, they changed other structures. It was inevitable. So wheat used to grow that high. Have you noticed how high it grows now? It only grows that high. Because if it still grew that high with the heavy yield of grain, the stalk breaks. So it only grows that high. It has a thick stem, because with some strains, there's 6 to 8 times the grain on that plant than originally was. Now that wheat, Dr. Norman Bulag got a Nobel Prize in 1970 for his hybridised wheat. And it went worldwide from the 1970s. So by the 1990s, every bread, cereal, cake, pizza, pasta, it's all made out of the hybridised wheat. And the reason why the farmers grab this new strain is because they can get up to 6 to 8 times the grain per acre. That's 6 to 8 times money per acre. They've got to pay their bills. So it took off because it was so popular. But it was rushed through, no safety studies. And it sounds like the COVID vaccine. Rushed through with no safety studies. I have to tell you, I'm not interested in being experimented on, thank you very much. No safety studies. And only now are they starting to see the full effect. So what happened with the hybridisation of the wheat? It changed the starch structure. And this starch structure that was created is called amylopectin A. Amylopectin A gets the blood, let's say this is average blood sugar. Amylopectin A gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, then we've got a corresponding drop. This is A. Amylopectin B, to give you something to compare it to, is found in bananas, in potatoes. And if you're familiar with the glycemic index of food, bananas and potatoes, they get a fairly quick high and a fairly quick low. But as you can see, it's not as high, not as fast, and not as low. Probably better to say it comes to more there. Another comparison, amylopectin C is the starch found in legumes, so chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed peas, lentils, all your legumes. So amylopectin C starch, that gives a nice steady rise, in maintenance, nice steady drop. It is that starch that our cells need. The lunch we had today will give that. A nice, steady, sure, consistent delivery of fuel. Now let me show you the glycemic index. So the glycemic index is how quickly the glucose in that food is released into the blood. So baseline is 55. So anything under 55 is considered low glycemic index, very good for diabetics because it doesn't give a rush of glucose. Anything above is considered high. So cherries. Where do cherries sit? Cherries sit at about 26. Grapefruit. Grapefruit sits at 25. So these are excellent fruits for the diabetic. Where does sugar sit? Whether it be white, brown or tan, it sits at 59. That's not a surprise. White. So white wheat, it sits at 69. Eeh. So how can a slice of white bread get the blood sugar level up higher than a candy? It's because of the amylopectin A. I'm glad you're sitting down for the next information. Whole wheat. Whole wheat sits at 72. Hey, how could that be? Well, because it's whole wheat, it's not refined, and because it's not refined, there's more amylopectin A in it. My husband said to me, Barbara, what are you saying? I just got this lady on the phone that says that Barbara says that white bread's better than brown bread. And I knew exactly what it was. So whole wheat bread has more fibre, has more B vitamins, absolutely. But regarding the glycemic index, whole wheat bread has more amylopectin A, which means it gets the blood sugar level up higher and quicker. You see that? And if you look at the timeline, Nobel Prize in the 1970s, went worldwide in the 1970s. By the 1990s, isn't that when the explosion of diabetes happened? It's all around that time. I had a lady come to me with tears in her eyes. I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I'm a diabetic." She said, "I'm 69. I was diagnosed at 65, 4 years ago. I was diagnosed 4 years ago." She said, "I have wholemeal bread, wholemeal cereal, wholemeal cakes, wholemeal pasta. And every 6 months I go to the doctor and he puts me on more insulin." And she said, "I'm doing everything they tell me." And the lady down the road, she eats croissants and cheesecakes. But I don't do that. She said, I'm crying tears of joy because you've just solved the puzzle. It's the wheat. She said, I'm also crying tears of frustration because for 4 years I've been diligently doing what they tell me and getting worse. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. So if you want to explore that a little bit more, it's a very interesting subject. You can read it in Dr. William Davis's book, Wheat Belly, where he shows exactly what happened to that wheat when it was hybridized. One man wrote to me, he said, Barbara, you're wrong on the wheat. Jesus is the bread of life. I said, Jesus is the bread of life. There's no doubt about that. But the bread he's referring to is not the bread we have today. Can you still get wheat that has not been hybridized? You can. It's called Enkorn or Spelt, Kamut. So there are a few strains. And you'll notice they're called ancient grains because they're the old grain that has not been hybridized. And so as you can see, there are a few factors coming together to cause diabetes. So what I'm going to show you now is how you can reverse diabetes. So we're going to have a look at sunshine. Number 1, more sunshine. Why more sunshine? Because when we expose ourselves to the sun, the ultraviolet rays from the sun convert a form of cholesterol just under the skin to the vitamin D. And our body cannot heal without vitamin D. There are 2,500 receptor sites on the DNA to vitamin D. Every single part of the body must have vitamin D. So make sure you get sunshine every day. What about water? To access that glycogen, we need to be well hydrated. So if I got up in the morning and did not have water and went for my run, it's quite possible you might find me on the side of the road passed out. Because unless I give my body fluid, it can't access that glycogen. And the most dehydrated time of the whole day is in the morning, as soon as you wake up. Did you know you lose moisture in the night? Have you ever slept on a mattress on the floor and in the morning you pick up the mattress, it's damp underneath because we lose fluid in the night? That's why all our beds are on slats or ensembles so that the air can evaporate the moisture that we lose when we sleep. That's why beds should be aired before you make them. Even if you just air them for half an hour, you must air your bed before you make it. And so water is vital. We should be taking approximately 8 glasses of water a day. And the best way to take your water is little by little by little by little by little. You probably noticed how I drink. I always have my water bottle there, a couple of mouthfuls here, a couple of mouthfuls there. If I'm in the garden, I've got my water there. If I'm at my desk working, I've got my water there. When I go to bed at night, I've got my water next to my bed. So wherever you are, have your water there. The water's vital. And in the book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water by Dr. Batman Geheldage, he shows that hunger pang many people get mid-morning, it's actually thirst. So one day my son Peter came to me when he was 15. He said, Mum, the water's not doing it anymore. I looked at my clock and I said, great, it's lunchtime. And that's when you'll find if the water's not doing it anymore, it probably is time to eat. But always try water first. Sleep. It's between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. How are you going, students? Are you getting into bed by 9? You'll retain and understand the things that you're learning more efficiently if you can get to bed early. But regarding diabetes, the pancreas is the organ we're specifically looking at. The pancreas is healing and reviving in those night hours. So it's vital that we get those night hours, ideally 8 hours. Sorry, I know my 8 is my accent. Just in case you're not getting it, 8 sits between 7 and 9, okay, in there. 9, another strange accent. My favourite's 9 to 5. And if you're not used to sleeping that much, I've got some good news. You can train yourself back into it. And if you want to get to bed by 9 o'clock, you've got to start thinking about that at 7. Isn't that right? At 9 o'clock is not the time to think about having a shower and getting ready. No. Then it'll be nearly 9:45 by the time you're in bed. You've got to plan it. Plan it early. Trust in God. Thank God every day for your pancreas. Picture your pancreas healing. Whatever happens in your life, thank God for that. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, the Bible says, in everything give thanks. Even if you've got diabetes, yes, because when you conquer your diabetes, you are now qualified to help others. And you will, I've seen it many times, abstain. That means there are some things that must be kept out of your diet. And I'm sure you're not surprised to know that number 1 is wheat. Do I eat wheat? I do, but not much. Sometimes I'm in places when it's all there is. It doesn't affect me. But if I had any sort of health problem, I wouldn't touch it. If I have an option, I have something else. But if someone is wanting to conquer their diabetes, this must stop. Number 2 is sugar. If someone has diabetes, they really have to stop as much as possible all sweeteners. Now there is one sweetener that will not cause a massive insulin rise, and that is stevia. Stevia is a plant sweetener. If someone says to me, I don't like stevia, I say to them, you've used too much. It's hard to believe that a 1/16 of a teaspoon is the same sweetness as 2 teaspoons of sugar. So most people put too much in and then it gets a bitter aftertaste. So if you're going to use it, use a tiny bit, not sweet enough, another tiny bit until you get the right sweetener. Number 3, caffeine. Because caffeine causes the body to have a crisis response, yes, gets the blood pressure up. Well, it's because it's a crisis response. But what it also does is it causes a release of glucose, causing a release of insulin. Because a crisis response means you're about to do the run or the climb or the fight of your life. So the body gets ready for that. That's what caffeine causes in the body. So anyone wanting to conquer diabetes, the caffeine must stop. So they're the main things that must stop. These things have to be taken out of the body to conquer diabetes. Inhale. How does inhaling through your nose help diabetes? Now, do you remember the 2 gases that are released when you breathe through your nose? Nitric oxide. And also breathing in and out through the nose raises the carbon dioxide. Those 2 gases have a vasodilation effect. Vasodilation means an opening of the blood vessels all through the body. Do you know what that means? An increase of blood supply to the pancreas. So breathing through the nose, breathing in and out through the nose. Have you tried it? I tell you, the hardest time is when you're exercising, but you can do it. It feels like you're going to die at first. We're so used to opening our mouth wide and getting the air in and out, but that causes a disruption in pressure. It causes a disruption in the gases, and the two main gases, of course, are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Whereas what nose does, it actually pressurizes it and keeps it at the correct level. When you breathe out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. And you lose too much carbon dioxide, you can't pick up oxygen at the cellular level. And students, look how much energy you're going to get if you're getting adequate oxygen. So we're going to be talking about chronic fatigue syndrome later in the week. There's one cause of chronic fatigue syndrome, it's lack of oxygen. Now there could be 100 reasons why there's lack of oxygen, and we'll look at some of those. But one of them is just the way people are breathing. Nutrition. So what is the best nutrition to conquer diabetes? The best nutrition. The best nutrition is low glycemic index foods. So low GI foods. So low GI foods are foods that don't cause a massive release of glucose into the blood. And it's very easy to get a glycemic index chart where you can have a look at the low GI foods. So white rice is high GI, basmati rice, brown rice, they're low GI. White potatoes high, whereas sweet potatoes low. So just even changing it, bananas high, but cherries are low. So it can be just little adjustments. So for the diabetic, when they target your low GI foods, they can see a dramatic change in their blood glucose levels just by the low GI foods. And I think I mentioned to you before the legumes. Legumes are lovely and low. And there are so many legumes and there are so many different ways to cook them. I met a man, he was a scientist. He was 69. He said to me, when I was in my 40s, I was told I was pre-diabetic. And I was told I should eat legumes every day. So he said, I do. And he said, and I never got diabetes. Because it gives a nice, steady, sure release of glucose. No quick highs, because anything that gives a quick high will come along with a quick low. And that's what you're trying to avoid. Lots of vegetables. A potato's out. Oh, my husband would be very sad if potatoes stopped. You can have a little potato, just not a whole plate of them. Lots of vegetables. What about fruit? Some fruits are out. So ideally, with fruit, only the low GI. So what would be low GI fruits? All your berries are low. Kiwi, pears, grapefruit's low. So you might have to eliminate your grapes and your watermelons and your peaches, but there's lots of other fruit. All berries are low, that's right. All your nuts, all nuts and seeds are fine. All nuts and seeds are fine. What about grains? Well, the best grains are your whole grains. And most whole grains you'll find are low. But as we've already mentioned, the wheat has to stop. With moderation, I'm also going to look at timing. Now there's a way of eating today that's the most popular way. It's called time-restricted eating, or the 5-2 diet, or intermittent fasting. You've heard of that? What's time-restricted eating? Time-restricted eating, and you can Google that and have a look at it. Time-restricted eating, it might surprise you, is eating twice, 6 hours apart in a 24-hour period. Now, what did they used to tell diabetics to do? Eat every 2 hours. Is that right? Well, they've changed their mind. Do you wonder when they're going to make up their mind? But what really interests me about time-restricted eating is it's exactly what Ellen White, who wrote back in the mid-1800s, was suggesting. But there's a slight difference with what she was suggesting. But actually, it's very similar to the old saying, let's eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper. A lady said to me once, what do paupers eat? I said, sometimes nothing. What the time-restricted eating, what they advise, Dr. Michael Mosley in his book Fast Diet, he talks about it there. He suggests eating a meal at 1 o'clock and eating another meal at 7 o'clock. But I've talked to a few people, and this one lady, she said to me, I'm fainting by 10 o'clock. And she said, and I have such a big meal at 7, I can't sleep properly. So that form of time-restricted eating does not make sense to me, because our stomach, our whole digestion is better prepared for a meal in the morning than any time. And then much research has shown, and I'll go into this a bit more when we do our journey through the gut, our food, say that meal we had at lunchtime, that takes about 3.5 to 4 hours to digest. And then the stomach loves at least an hour rest. So we should be leaving about 5 to 6 hours between meals. But the timing is important. When we go to sleep at night, our stomach wants to sleep too. And yet, in Australia, and I think it's US too, people eat breakfast like a pauper, lunch like a pauper, and the tea is or you can call it supper. The supper is king and the queen together, is that right? And it's because we're such a fast society, it's a bit of a nibble at that, a bit of a nibble at this, a bit of a nibble at that, and then finally in the evening we've got time and the person's very hungry and they eat too much. So timing is important. And this is where moderation comes in. Be moderate with your timing, be moderate with the eating. There is no limit on salad, but we certainly have to be moderate on the concentrated foods, like your nuts, like your seeds, like your oils. Exercise. Exercise has quite a dramatic effect on not only diabetes but weight loss. So I'm drawing weight loss into this now too. So what I want to show you is a type of exercise that has the most dramatic effect on weight loss and on diabetes. And it's called the high intensity interval training. So the high intensity interval training, as the name implies, they're intervals of high intensity and then intervals of recovery, and it's usually done for a cycle. There's a book called Body by Science by Dr. Doug McGuff, and what I love about his book, he takes you inside the cell and shows you exactly what's happening with your high intensity interval training. But let me first of all define it before we go inside the cell. So most researchers agree that 30 seconds, high intensity. So what's high intensity? This is running for your life, or cycling, or swimming as fast as you go, or jogging on the rebounder, or doing the push-ups. It's intense. And I guess whatever you do is what suits you. My husband Michael and I, we run up hills at Misty Mountain. And our recovery is walking down the hills. So usually recovery is about 90 seconds. And ideally it's done for a cycle of 6. Now have you done the maths on that? How long does that take? Let's be generous and say 15 minutes. How many hours in a day? 24. If someone says to me, I've got no time to exercise, I'm sorry, but I don't accept that. 15 minutes. If you haven't got 15 minutes, it's time to assess what you do with your time. And that's one of the beauties of going to bed early. Then you can get up early and you can fit it in there. And if you can do it early in the morning, you'll reap the benefits all through the day. So again, the high intensity depends on you and what you can do. Most of the research has been done on exercise bikes, especially for people who have got knee or ankle problems. All the weight is on their hips, or if they're unstable, they can hold on. And the high intensity is they're cycling as fast as they can. And then the recovery can maybe just be slow cycling. For Michael and I, it's running up hills and it's just walking down the hills. How do you know when you're ready for your next set? Your body will tell you. And your fitness is not dependent on how hard and fast you can run, but how long you take to recover. It's the recovery time that determines your fitness. So the fitter you are, the quicker will be your recovery time. So it's a good idea to notice your recovery time. If your recovery time is 5 minutes, that's all right. Rome wasn't built in a day. Write it down, because you will notice as the days go on, your recovery time will get less and less and less. Dr. Al Sears, famous exercise doctor, his book is PACE. PACE means progressive acceleration of cardiopulmonary exertion. So notice the first letter, progressive. This is progressive. If you can't do that now, you will be able to do it. So for people who find it hard to get to 30 seconds, that's all right, go to 20 if that's all you can do. But what I find when I first started doing this, I had to count, because at 20 seconds my body's saying to me, that'll do. At 25 seconds my body's saying, this is ridiculous. And at 30 seconds I feel like I'm nearly dying. If I didn't count, I wouldn't get to the 30 seconds. And then the 90 seconds recovery for a cycle of 6. But I want to show you what happens in the cell and why this is so important for diabetics and for weight loss. But before I show you what happens, I'm also going to draw the fat cell. So here's the fat cell. It's getting bigger and bigger on the high carbohydrate diet. So let's say someone's up to their second set of 30 seconds high intensity, and they're starting to exhaust their glycogen because it's early morning. So by the time they're getting to their third set of high intensity, glycogen stores have run out. And so now the body says, we need more fuel. So the human growth hormone's released. The human growth hormone is a naturally occurring hormone that is active or busy when we're growing. Now, I haven't grown since I was 16. That probably doesn't surprise you. My son William grew 2 inches from 19 to 22. Often boys are still growing in their 20s. And when we're still growing, the human growth hormone's active. But when we finish growing, it basically goes into retirement. But when we do the high intensity exercise or any form of exercise that requires more fuel, the human growth hormone's released. And when the human growth hormone's released, it triggers the release of hormone-sensitive lipase. This morning, we looked at sensitive. This morning we looked at sublingual lipase. Remember that under the tongue, which breaks down saturated fat? That's what lipase is. It breaks down fat. So hormone-sensitive lipase, what fat does it break down? It breaks down our fat stores. And remember what fat is. It's stored fuel. And so we've run out of glycogen and we need more fuel. So the human growth hormone is triggered. It causes a release of hormone-sensitive lipase that starts to release our stored fuel, which is what fat is. The human growth hormone also causes the body to become a fat burner. Do you remember this morning I showed you that Glucose burns at 4 calories per gram and fat burns at 9 calories per gram. No wonder the body starts to burn fat as fuel. It's going to give more than twice the units of energy. The human growth hormone also increases the body's ability to utilise protein. Protein is vital. We need to be eating adequate protein. We need to be not drinking with our meals, so we've got nice strong hydrochloric acid to break down our protein. But here's another aspect. This high intensity interval training causes a release of the human growth hormone, which increases the body's ability to utilise protein. The human growth hormone also increases the circulation of the blood to the skin. And when the circulation of the blood is increased to the skin, it keeps the skin supple and slows down aging. So the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for this because their business is dependent on them looking good. Well, I'm offering it to you cut price today. If you implement every day for 15 minutes the high intensity interval training, you're going to get a release of the human growth hormone, which help to keep you younger, slow down aging, all the things that we dream about. In fact, the results from this effort far exceed the effort that we put into it. So let me tell you about a young man that came to do our program. He had type 1 diabetes. His name was Dan. He was 19. He developed type 1 diabetes at the age of 15 when he went on a very strong course of antibiotics for a chest cold that had killed off some of the beta cells in his pancreas. So after that strong antibiotics, he had diabetes, type 1 diabetes. His doctor told him that his pancreas was dead. He was on 90 units of insulin a day. He was carrying a bit of excess weight because insulin's got a one-set mind. I must store, I must store, I must store. I've got to get the glucose out of the blood and into storage. That's why a lot of diabetics carry excess weight. Now, he told me, now we leave it with the diabetics to test their blood sugar levels and adjust their doses accordingly. We leave it with them because when they leave us, they're going to be by themselves. The first week, he was with us 4 weeks. The first week, if he got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd take a candy. That would get the blood sugar level up very high, very fast. Always gave him a headache. But he was told that's what he has to do. The second week he felt a bit guilty, so he decided not to do that anymore. And if he got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd have an apple. Now it takes a long time to eat an apple in the middle of the night. It would get the blood sugar level up. He wouldn't get the headache because it didn't go up as hard and fast. Third week he decided to do something different because he'd heard this lecture. If he got a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd get up and do 30 push-ups. What would get his blood sugar levels up? The release of glycogen. And maybe even the human growth hormone. In fact, he said to me, why didn't anyone tell me about glycogen? Do you think it's the diabetic's best kept secret? We've got these stores. We don't need to be eating every 2 hours. You eat every 2 hours, you greatly compromise your body's ability to digest food. In fact, most people between meals, all they need is water. That helps the release. By the time he went home, he was on 10 units of insulin a day. Type 1 diabetic. I said to him, well, Dan, I don't think your pancreas is dead. Why was he getting blood sugar level lows in the middle of the night for the first few weeks? Because he was still on too much insulin. He was on insulin when he came to us to allow him to eat all that. So when he stopped all that and stayed on that same amount of insulin, his blood sugar levels started going too low. One morning he got up and his blood sugar levels, now I have to tell you Australian, I just know Australian levels. So for Australian, your blood sugar levels should be, 5.5, 6, 6.5, that's normal. He got up in the morning and his blood glucose levels were 3. That's almost passing out. He had a glass of water, got dressed, had another glass of water, went for a run, came back, took his blood sugar levels, they were 9. And he'd had nothing to eat. We live in an amazing body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself. But I want to tell you what's going on in here. So what's happened when we're running out of glycogen stores, the human growth hormone's released, which as you can see starts accessing our fat stores. But by the end of the first high intensity, the 20-step pathway is speeding up. That's not a surprise. 8-step pathway is speeding up. That's not a surprise. But this pathway here, this 20-step pathway is a fast pathway. This 8-step pathway is a slow one. And there's a rate-setting enzyme in there that will always keep this one faster and this one slower. And so what happens is more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into the powerhouse because this is speeding up so fast. Even though this is going faster, this one's so faster, more pyruvate's being made. And so the body stores it as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid? In recovery time, when you're walking down the hill, trying very hard not to breathe through your mouth, maybe slowly cycling. If you're on the rebounder, your recovery time might just be this instead of leaping. When you're in recovery time, the liver converts that lactic acid back to pyruvate, feeds it into the powerhouse. So when you're in recovery time, you're burning just as much fuel as when you're running for your life. That's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why this is the most effective form of exercise. So you just got to find out what works for you. You just got to work out, if you can't run, it might be a cycle. You can't cycle, it might be swimming. You can't swim, get a kickboard and some flippers. Rebound. You just got to find out what works for you. Push-ups. Can't do push-ups? Do push-ups on the wall. Do push-ups on the bench. Do ladies push-ups. Where there's a will, there's a way. You just got to find out what works for you. And this explains why exercise is a powerful and important part of 1, conquering diabetes, and 2, weight loss. So before we finish, let me give another story. This man's name was Bobby. He's 62. He's carrying a lot of excess weight. This was at the health retreat in Alabama a few years ago. He said, I've spent $1 million on my health in the last 10 years. He lives in Florida. He said, my doctors have given up on me. And he goes to the top specialists. He said, I'm on 90 units of insulin a day. He said, I'm on blood pressure medication, statin, blood thinning. He said, I'm on it all. And so he did basically what Dan did. He ate low glycemic foods. He ate whole grains. He ate legumes every meal at the retreat. He ate 2 meals a day, ate a meal at 7:30 and a meal at 1:30, and just had broth at night. He couldn't do much with exercise because his legs were swollen, so I got him on the rebounder every hour for 1 minute just doing this. And when he could manage that, then he could start to jump a little bit. The legs were swelling and the legs went down. In fact, at the end of 2 weeks, he was down to 10 units of insulin a day from 90 units, type 1 type 1 diabetes. He emailed me 3 months later. He said, "No, I've got to adjust this to yours." So let's say he was maybe 200 pound in weight. He'd lost 50 pound in 3 months. He said, "I'm off all my medication." This is type 1 diabetic. "I'm off my blood pressure medication." He said, "I'm off everything." I said, "Tell me what you're doing." He said, "I swim 30 laps of the pool a day." He said, "I cycle 6 kilometres a day and I rebound 3 times a day." And when he first came, he said, "Whatever you tell me to do, I will do." He said, "My doctors have given up on me. You're my last chance." Now just imagine that $1 million that he spent on the doctors. He could have come to the health retreat twice a year for the next 20 years. Incredible story. But he did it. And that's why I say to people, what are you prepared to put into this? Because whatever you put into it, that will dictate the results. How long will it take to conquer? Depends on a few things. Depends on how you can implement this. Depends on what you're able to exercise. Depends on many things. But what I love about this is these laws that will sustain me are free. Isn't that true? They're free. So just adjusting the diet, adjusting the lifestyle, and the results are incredible. So notice how much weight he lost. So this is this is part of it too. We've got time for a few questions before we have a break. Yes?
What was the name of that book on the high-intensity workout?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. What was the name of the book on the high-intensity workout? There are 3 books that I know of, and there's possibly more. There's Dr. Michael Mosley, and it's called Fast Exercise. But The Body by Science is by Dr. Doug McGuff. And I really liked his book because he takes you inside the cell. So Doug McGuff. What interested me too about Doug McGuff, with Doug McGuff, he was interviewed and they said, "What's the most important diet or exercise?" I thought he'd say exercise. He said 80% is diet. Because what we're eating determines how it is burnt at the cellular level. So that's Body by Science. And the other one is Dr. Al Sears, and his book is called PACE, Progressive Acceleration, Cardiopulmonary Exertion. You don't have to repeat that.
So, did you say to wait to exercise till after you've eaten? Did I misunderstand?
I'm glad of your question. We need to define this. No. When you eat, it takes 1,200 calories to digest a meal. So the worst time to do to high intensity is after you've eaten, because you've got to let your body digest. So the best time to exercise is before you eat.
Thank you.
So in the morning. Yes?
I have a few questions. The HIIT, when you start with the 30 seconds, do you try to do that with your mouth closed?
Yes?
Okay, so the idea is to build up to that so you could do it with your mouth closed.
Now, you're going to feel like you're dying, but you'll get used to it.
Okay. I have like 4 questions. The human growth hormone, is that the only type of exercise when using that type of exercise is the only way it's released, or any other exercise will also help release?
Well, you'll see with the high intensity exercise, this high intensity takes in a whole heap of types of exercises. So it's really what's commonly called cardio,
Okay.
or anything that gets that heart rate up.
Okay. My other question was, I've heard, and I don't know if this is good or bad, I just wanted your input on it. They say a lot of taking this apple cider vinegar before you eat, especially carbohydrates, because it reduces, let's say, the glycemic level of the food by 30%. Do you have any thoughts or comments about that?
I don't eat apple cider vinegar because everything they claim that the apple cider vinegar can do, the lemon can do.
Okay, so lemon. Will lemon would be, okay, in other words, will it be beneficial for people that have a little bit of a glycemic problem with food to add some lemon to their pasta or whatever they're eating?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. And that would slow down their breakdown of the carbohydrate a little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. And my last question, I heard something from somebody that has a child that's type 1 diabetic, and I don't know, I didn't understand it, and I don't know that much about type 1 diabetes. But he was saying you also need the insulin to move out the glucose from the cell for a type 1 diabetic. Is that true, or is that different if it is glycogen? They don't need insulin.
The insulin gets the glucose inside the cell, and once it's inside the cell, it's burned. Mm-hmm. And the glycogen gets stored inside the cell, but the glycogen that gets stored in the liver, it can go out to other parts of the body.
Okay, so they don't need any help of insulin, just to bring it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have some questions about gestational diabetes. First of all, how do you, is it the same, do we do all the same things while pregnant with gestational diabetes?
That's right.
And then secondly, I'm not sure how to frame this question, but basically if you have gestational diabetes, usually you're at a higher risk to get type 2 later. So is that a
you will
surefire thing? If
you will be more susceptible, and you definitely will if you eat a lot of this.
Okay.
But if you don't eat a lot of that, and if you eat more what we're suggesting here, you will not get type 2 diabetes.
Okay. And then the last thing about the high intensity, does that need to be, can you break it up into, say, 5 minutes morning? Not after a meal, but can you break it up into maybe, say, 3 times, or does it need to be done all at once?
Yeah, you could.
The Longevity Clinic up in Seattle, Washington, is giving a 100% guarantee on curing type 2 diabetes with hormone treatment. Can you comment on hormone treatments?
With hormone treatment, you can see by what I've shown you here in the stories I've given you that we've got just about 100% a surety that type 2 diabetes will be conquered, and we've seen it again and again and again and again. So when they claim that they can do it with hormone treatment, I would question, what are the hormones? Are they synthetic hormones? I'm not interested in putting any synthetic hormones in my body, so I question what it is and how they would do it.
What if you don't want to lose weight? What would you recommend it as far as
what we
exercise?
find on this diet, the people who are overweight lose it, the people who are the right weight maintain it, and the people who are underweight actually put on weight. It's a balancing diet. Okay, let's have a break. We'll have some more questions with the next one, and that'll allow the table to come up. We've got a little bit of preparation, so please just a 5-minute break, and then we're going to look at natural remedies.
Testing, not on yet. Testing. Maybe if I turned it on. Is it on? Is it working? Okay, now, all right. So we just want to make a friendly reminder. Please turn your cell phones on to vibrate so that it doesn't interrupt the meetings. And tomorrow, again, at just as her 3 o'clock session is done, before we break for the little break for the 4 o'clock session, we will be taking up an offering to help cover the expenses. So just want you to be, if you won't be here tomorrow or you need to leave before that, we are happy to take it early. You just find me. I'll be here. All right, thank you.
So welcome back everyone to our natural remedies demonstration. And you'll find that some of these are poultices, some of these are compresses, and I will be defining the poultices and the compresses, but there's a couple of things I want to start straight away because we'll need a little bit of time to look at their full result. Now the first one I'm going to be looking at is castor oil. I don't advise castor oil to be taken by mouth. Castor oil can only be applied topically, and castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. No other oil will penetrate like castor oil. And wherever castor oil penetrates, it breaks up lumps, bumps, adhesions, tumours, bone spurs, great on scar tissue. Obviously, it's not going to break it up straight away, but like with a bone spur, if the bone spur's been there 3 years, it might take 3 months. If it's been there 3 months, it might take 3 weeks. So that's a little bit of an estimation on time. Now, there are some people get something like carpal tunnel, and also there are conditions where the tendons in there start to get hard and shrink up. I know my husband, his father, his hands were all shrunk up by the time he was in his 70s because of the ligaments and the tendons in there shrinking up. You know, castor oil will break that up. And my husband's hands are like this now. So I'm going to show you how to make a compress. The best compress for castor oil is wool. So this is a woolen material. And we want a few layers because the thicker the compress, the more castor oil it can hold, and the more castor oil is available to go into you. Now you could rub castor oil on there, but it takes about 15 minutes before it slowly starts to soak through. And rubbing it in, compared to wearing a compress over the night, so much more castor oil can get in. But it's so thick that it takes quite a while to soak through. So I'm going to show you how it's done. So I'm going to just put it on the middle area of the compress, and that'll just sit there because it is so thick. It takes about 15 minutes to soak through. So for the castor oil, let's say we've got a compress this size. I'll put about this much castor oil on it. And then by the time it soaks through, it'll come out a little bit more. And then when it goes on your hot body, your warmth from your body thins the oil, and so it spreads out a little bit more. Can you see why you only put it on the middle section? Now the beauty of the castor oil compress is you can use it again and again and again and again and again. So I've got a wrist here that hurts me in the night. So I wear a castor oil compress on there every night. And if I wear the castor oil compress on there every night, I have no pain at all in the night. So what is it? I don't know. Might be a bit of arthritis. I don't know. But I do know that the castor oil means I don't have any pain in the night, so I do it every night. Sometimes we don't know everything. We don't know what it might be. And I don't know, but I'm not interested in really going and having any tests because what would I do anyway? Nothing but what I'm already doing. So that's the castor oil. You can use castor oil on the abdomen for constipation. You could use it for irritable bowel. You could use it for fibroids. And I know one lady, she told me that her fibroid was 5 centimetres, and after 3 months she had a test and it was 1 centimetre. You could use it on the abdomen for cysts on the ovaries, for polycystic ovarian syndrome, to break up endometriosis, which are hard little pockets. You could use it for diverticulitis, or if anyone's got any scar tissue problems there, maybe they had surgery 5 years ago and the scar tissue is starting to cause problems, the castor oil. Now, a lady in Alabama last week told me that you can buy a castor oil compress pack that goes around your waist, and Velcro strips hold it into place. I thought, well, that's handy. Or some people that are using it here, they just put it inside their clothes and wear it. For lumps in the breast, excellent on lumps on the breast. How often would you wear it on the abdomen? At least 5, ideally 8 hours a day. The key is consistency. I say that so much on my iPad. When I start to type it, the iPad brings it up. The key is consistency every day, every day, every day. You could use it under your rib for gallstones, for a liver that's not happy. You could use it on the back for kidney stones. Any place on the body where there's a bone spur. You could use it on the chest for a congested chest. I know people that have had brain tumours and they rub it into the area where the tumour is. So there's a whole lot of areas that you can use it. So that's only about 5 minutes. That's almost soaked through, you see that? And you see by what I've got plastic behind it, and the plastic is about 1/2 inch more than the compress. And so if it was going on the hand, it would go on like that, and then you need just a little stretch bandage. This is the bandage that I use every night to bandage mine on. So that's castor oil. You can also put castor oil in the eye. If you find it hard to get it in the eye, you can wipe it over the eye. It'll penetrate through into the eye. And that can be used for glaucoma, it can be used for cataracts, it can be used for dry eyes, sore eyes, red eyes. Now we're going to have a look at the onion. Every home has an onion. And you can use the onion cooked, or you can use it raw. So first of all, we're going to have a look at how you can use it cooked. For a cooked onion, excellent on a boil. If you put it on a boil, you would steam it or dry bake it and then cut it in half. So you cut it in half so you're looking at the rings. So now you're looking at the rings. And you keep the skin intact because that holds it all together. And you put it on the boil, and of course you wait until it's not going to burn you. And then you might cover that with a sheet of plastic and then bandage that on. And ideally for a boil, you leave it about 24 hours. And I've known people have said to me, it brings so much relief. You see, the onion is a drawer. So when you put it on a boil, the heat and the drawing property of the onion draws it all into place, and when the onion's taken off, usually everything comes out. So it resolves it very quickly. So cooked onion, very good on a boil. Cooked onion for earaches. Earaches. Now last May I was in Oban. And I was getting a boat out to the island of Iona, because when I read The Great Controversy, I read about Columba and how he wrote a lot of the New Testament and his students out on the island of Iona. So I was eager to go and have a look at it, but I've been travelling a lot. I had a bit of a cold and my throat was sore, and by the time I got to my little attic room, which was a cheap place to stay. There was only one place in the room I could stand up. and I'm only 5'2". But the sore throat had gone up and my ear was aching. What are you going to do? I'm travelling. What are you going to do? And then I remembered that I used to put an onion on the children if they had an earache. Where are you going to get a cooked onion? I'm travelling. So I went to 2 restaurants and said, could I buy a cooked onion? And they said no. So the 3rd place I went to, I smiled very nicely and said, could I buy a cooked onion? They said, well, go and ask the chef. And they said, yes. I said, I'm Australian, I'm travelling, I've got an earache. And so I came back half an hour later and they had cooked onion. And I cut it in half, and because my neck was so sore too, I was able to put the onion on my throat and on my ear. I wrapped it in a cloth that I had in my bag, and then I got the waste paper trash can, I hadn't used it, and I put that over it to insulate it. Then I put a big towel over that, and for 3 hours I just lay in bed dozing in and out of sleep with the onion on my ear. Brought relief. Now when I first put it on, my pain level was getting up to 8 out of 10. And with the hot onion brought a lot of relief, and I dozed in and out of sleep. And when it gets cool, that's where you take it off. And it was starting to get cool, but the plastic had kept it warm for quite a while. And when I took it off, my pain level was 5 out of 10. And it was evening, so I slept all night. And when I woke up in the morning, my pain was about 1 or 2 out of 10. Now, before I put the onion on, I could not even drink water. I could not even swallow. So I was in a fairly bad way. What are you going to do? I'm in a strange country. What are you going to do if you go to hospital? They're going to charge me a fortune. And what are they going to do? Anybody? What can? So you see, your mind goes to, what can I do? But I've got to do something. So the onion. It's actually the first time in my life I've ever used an onion poultice on myself. Yeah? Question is, does it make any difference what type of onion? It could be white, it could be brown, it could be red, it doesn't matter. So whatever onion that you have got. So when I woke up in the morning, my pain levels were right down. I could drink water, I could eat breakfast, and I went to the Isle of Iona. And when I came back, I went to this restaurant and I decided I was so happy for what they did, I might go in and get a bowl of soup. And I couldn't see the waiter, and he came in later, and I went up and I smiled, and he said, did you go to Iona? I said, yes, because of the onion poultice. So that young man and the chef all now know about the onion poultice. Remember, you've got to keep it warm. If it gets cold, you have to take it off. So what you could do is you could put it on, put plastic over it and bandage it on your head. Or some people will put a beanie over. You call it a beanie, a little woolen hat. You've just got to keep it warm. But the onion is a drawer, and it'll draw out. It'll draw and it'll relieve. And I was so very thankful for my onion poultice, because I had paid for my trip to Iona and I didn't want to miss it, but I was in so much pain. And it was interesting, I always ask for God's leading. And when I went to the island of Iona, there wasn't much there. And I went in to get some water at a little, do you call it a pub? Like bar thing, and they had a restaurant there. I went in to buy water, and I looked up and it said carrot soup, and I thought, oh, that will be wonderful on my throat. So I had a lovely bowl of carrot soup, and the girl came and said, do you want something to drink? And I said, oh, would you fill my water bottle? So I didn't even have to pay for my water. So now I'm going to show you what you can do with the raw onion. There's one more thing you can do with the cooked onion. When it's cooked, ideally it's steamed or dry baked. Now I don't know what the chef did with the onion I got. I just want a cooked onion. that you can cut it and you can squeeze the juice. It'll be boiling, of course, but you can squeeze it into a teaspoon and it'll be boiling, but when it hits the cold spoon, it now is warm and you can put that into the ear. And I did not do that. I didn't have a teaspoon and I just wanted that onion on my ear, but that's something else you can do. Now I'm going to show you what you can do for a sore throat, and I certainly did this a few days before I started my journey, not realizing my throat would get worse. But I had done a sliced onion on the throat. So I've finely sliced onion and I put it in a cloth, and I like to use a cotton cloth, and I fold it over again. So now I've got a little shape that'll fit on my neck, and it's got sliced onion in it. You put it on your throat, and then you put a bit of plastic over that, and you put a scarf around your throat and pin it. And that onion juice will little by little go through the cloth, through your skin, and it can bring relief to your sore throat. The question is, can you put it straight on the skin? That would be so messy. Then you've got bits of onion everywhere. But I like to put it in a thin cloth, and then it just holds it.
Is that raw?
It's raw. So we're on to the raw onion now. There's another thing you can do with raw onion. You can slice it and then chop it into little bits. And when you've chopped it into little bits, you would get a cloth and you'd put all the little bits in the cloth. Now the one I'm doing now would be a good size for a child. And you would do this for a child that's got a cough. And you put the foot on the onion. And then you wrap that cloth around the foot. And then you'd put it in a plastic bag, seal that, and put a sock on. And you leave it there all night. And you would be surprised how there'll be no coughing in the night. The sole of the bare foot goes straight on the chopped onion. My grandson, I was with my daughter, and he had a cold, and we gave him a hot lemon drink and a bath, and he seemed to be okay. We put him to bed, but he coughed and he coughed and he coughed and he coughed. And after half an hour, he just coughed and coughed and coughed. We thought he'll go to sleep, but he was just still coughing. So we got him up, chopped up the onion, put it on each foot, wrapped him up, put him to bed. Not one more cough for the whole night. You almost have to experience it to believe how powerful it is. And that's the chopped onion straight on the sole of the foot. Now I'm going to show you how to make a cough syrup. This is a onion and honey cough syrup. So you get a jar and you put about 1/2 inch in the jar of chopped onion, and then you put approximately a teaspoon of honey. Now this is the best way to do it, when there's a little hole. So that's about a teaspoon, and then you put another layer of onion. And then you put another teaspoon of honey. And you keep doing this until you've used up your onion or the jar is full. And you let that sit for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, you strain the onion out. And you will see by the end of our lecture today that the syrup will have started to form. And the syrup is very different to the thick, sticky honey. The syrup is almost like water. It is really runny. Now I have made this with raw honey in the winter. You know, raw honey in the winter goes solid. It's like a candy. So I have made this syrup with the raw, hard honey, and it still makes a beautiful syrup. So you could have a teaspoon of that 3 times a day, or if someone's having trouble at night with their throat or coughing, you could even give them a teaspoon every half hour. So you see there's no syrup there now. All we've got is the thick, gooey honey and the onion. But by the time we've finished, you will see that a syrup will have started to form. Now that last topping, I sometimes put about 2 teaspoons of honey on the top. So that is the onion. Now we're going to look at garlic. And I'm going to write you up the recipe, as I promised, for the flu bomb. And the flu bomb can be taken 3 times a day when you've got a cold, bronchitis, asthma, COVID, any respiratory problem. So this is the recipe for the flu bomb. So the first ingredient is garlic, and I'm not going to put an amount there. It is as much as you can dare. So I could take that whole clove, but not a child might not take that whole clove. Some people can handle 2 cloves. It's up to you. And you finely grate it. There's a fine grater there. Or crush it. So I'm going to put a question mark there. It is as much as you dare. Ginger. Ginger's a wonderful heating herb. And ginger, it's usually about 1/4 teaspoon of finely grated. Cayenne pepper. I'm going to put a question mark there because it's as much as you dare. I can probably handle 1/2 teaspoon. Not everyone can handle that. Some people can handle a sprinkle. Some people can handle 1/4 teaspoon. I'll take this out of your view. Eucalyptus oil. Now there's definitely an amount for this. It's 1 drop. One lady said, I bought some eucalyptus oil, but it says not fit for human consumption on the bottle. I said, we're not advising that you drink 1/2 cup. There's a bit of common sense there. 1 drop. And then lemon. How much lemon? As much as you can. If lemons are $1 a lemon, I might do a squeeze. If they're falling off my tree, I might do a whole juice of a lemon. So it's the juice of a lemon. The juice of a lemon, and the last ingredient is honey. It's usually 1 teaspoon. And with this, you mix it with 1/2 cup of hot water. Now we had a very industrious staff member, when our lemons were falling off the tree, she decided to make a whole heap of flu bombs. And what she did, she poured them into little ice cube trays, and when they were frozen, tipped them into little snap-lock bags. It's just great. So if anyone at our retreat has a cold, getting a cold, they just take the ice cube out, pour 1/2 cup of boiling water on it, and they've got their flu bomb. So you might take this 3 times a day. For people with sensitive stomachs, they might take it just before they have a bowl of soup or just after a bowl of soup.
How much?
Pardon?
How much?
How much? You drink that?
Oh, the whole thing?
Yeah. That's 1 dose. Now you cannot give that to a baby. So there's another way to get garlic into a little one, and that is to bind it to the bottom of their feet. But if that garlic cut touches the bottom of their feet, it will blister. So I usually get a cloth like this, and I put fine slices on the cloth. And then I turn the cloth over and I bind it to the bottom of their feet like that and put a little sock or little bootie on. And little by little the juice goes through and the soles of the feet, where the biggest pores in your body are, start to take the garlic juice in, and you can smell it on their breath in a few minutes. And what that does is that helps to clear a head cold, helps to loosen a congested chest. And remember, garlic, with all its wonderful properties, there's your natural antibiotic, there's your antibacterial, all of those great things. So that's garlic. And yesterday, I think I told you about the antibiotic sandwich that Healthy Harry had. Slice of toast, sourdough of course, olive oil, crushed clove of garlic over the whole thing, avocado, tomato on top, delicious. Have that with a bowl of soup, you're doing well. Now we're going to look at ginger. And I'm going to show you how to make a ginger poultice. Why would you make a ginger poultice? The best way to remember this is ginger is for joints. Swollen joints. So it's great for gout or arthritis. So here's my plastic sheet, and what I've done is I've folded cling wrap over a few times. It's a bit more workable. And that's my cloth. But after I fold it, it'll just fit nicely on this. And I'm going to grate it on the finer grater. So ginger is excellent for joint inflammation. So it can be used on a sore lower back. It can be used on any inflamed joints. It's very good for that.
Could it be used for tendinitis?
Yep. You see the word itis. You know what itis means? Inflammation. So anywhere there's inflammation, especially joint inflammation. So you see how much I've done there? You can see that? And now I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to fold top, bottom, and the two sides, and that will make the poultice. I say I'm folding over north, south, east, and west. So I've got like a package, and that goes on the plastic like that. And the area that's going to go on the skin is where there's just one layer. The beauty of making a package like this is if it gets a little bit too wet, instead of dripping, it's going to be soaked up by those layers there. But I don't know if you can see that the juice is already coming through. And so on a painful joint, you would place this on it, and then the plastic, and then you would bandage that on. Bandage it round. Now just a word of warning. If you put that, there you can see the juice coming through. A word of warning, if you put this on an inflamed joint, within half an hour the skin gets very hot. It appears that the ginger pulls the inflammation out of the joint to the skin. And some people say to me, my skin is burning. And I say, you can take it off if you want. But some people say, no, it feels good. It feels good. But some people say, no, I can't bear it, it's too hot, so we just take it off. It already has done something, even if you leave it on for half an hour. So when we, at the health retreat, put a ginger poultice on, maybe it's a sore knee, a sore ankle, Bit harder with a sore hip, but you can still, you just hold it in place by the underwear often. Elbow, tennis elbow, bursitis, anything where there's itis, that's inflamed joint. Any type, but what I've done is, cling wrap, I've folded over a few times so it's manageable, because cling wrap is not manageable. And also you'll notice that not much is going to touch the skin. I've made it so not much is touching the skin, just the very outside. But we put the plastic on to prevent it from soiling the bandage or the clothes, and also it prevents the air getting to it and causing a chill. Yes?
Is this any cotton?
Is this any cotton? It is, but the thinner the better. Because the thinner it is, the more juice will come through. So we always put it on our guests about 6 o'clock at night, so that by 8:30 when they're going to bed, we say to them, "Are you happy with the heat?" And often they go, "Oh yes, that feels so nice." Sometimes I say, "No, it's too hot, well, we'll take it off." Because if we put it on just before they go to bed and they wake up 2 hours later and it's feeling too hot, it can interfere with sleep. So that's what we do. Now, I had one lady, she saw my lecture and she had a sore knee, so she put the ginger poultice on, and she said, and she could move her knee. She just couldn't believe it. It had got all the inflammation out. So she put another one on in the afternoon, had a shower, put another one on overnight, and when she woke up in the morning, the skin was all red and swollen and blistery, and she emailed me and said, "What have I done?" And I said, "Overdone it." I said, "You won't be able to do a ginger poultice for probably another week now, because too much of the inflammation was pulled out and it just irritated the skin." So what I say to people is just do it for 2 hours every afternoon, or maybe overnight, and give it a rest through the day. But what we find is, someone puts it on, say an inflamed joint, and it gets really hot, and they do it the next day, it's not as hot. They do it the next day and it's hardly hot at all. But they also find that by then the pain has gone. So any joint inflammation, if someone's got a sore lower back, they'll often put a hot water bottle on it, and the hot water bottle brings relief. Because whenever you're in pain, the muscles tighten, almost because of the pain, we naturally tighten. And so when they put a hot water bottle on their lower back, it brings relief because it relaxes the tight muscles. But that hot water bottle can cause the inflammation to be worse. But if you put a ginger poultice on a sore lower back, the whole area gets hot because it's pulling the inflammation out of the joint, which will relax the muscles, and yet it's reducing the inflammation in the joint. So it's very good for lower back pain. You can use ginger internally. And my favourite tea is grated ginger, and pour boiling water on it, let it sit for 10 minutes, then strain it. That's very nice. If it's too hot, just put a bit more hot water in it. And taking ginger tea can ease a sore throat. It can also settle an upset stomach. Ginger is used as an anti-nausea herb. If you get from the health food shop, tablets for seasickness or car sickness, it's always compressed ginger. So that's how you can use ginger. So ginger is used for joint inflammation. Now I'm going to show you what to use for tissue inflammation, and that is potato. So potato is very good on a sprained ankle. Potato is very good wherever there's tissue inflammation. So ingrown toenail, maybe a splinter you couldn't get out and it's swollen. And you make it much the same way. So we get our cloth. It's a good idea to get a little box, maybe a plastic box with a lid, and it's your poultice box. And you make little squares. You might make some big squares, you might make some little squares. sheets that are getting thin and starting to tear, they're the best poultice because it's thin. And the thinner the poultice, of course, the quicker the juice goes through. So we're going to do a potato poultice now. And the potato poultice, again, is for tissue inflammation. This is a very gentle poultice. And the other day someone asked about pink eye. Well, this is very good for pink eye. You would never put a ginger poultice on the eye. Yes, we have common sense. But the potato is very gentle. Don't grate up too much or it gets too wet, and there's nothing worse than leaking poultices. And that's why I go to great length to make them very neat and to wrap them up well. So there's my grated potato. And I'll make that into a poultice. I know we had one girl working for us for a while, and she was a bit of a messy girl, and her poultices were so messy. And I saw this poor guest one day, she'd made her a poultice and it was half falling out and bits of potato were, no. So you make it very neat. So there's your grated potato poultice, and you'll see the juice starting to come out. Very nice on red eyes. You know, sometimes men will get red eyes from welding. This is very cooling and soothing on that. Sometimes they only have to put it on their eye for an hour. So all tissue inflammation, the potato is very good. We've treated a few treading on rusty nail. My grandson, he was 3, he trod on a rusty nail and he had those little rubber crocs on. The rusty nail went through the croc into his foot. Because, you know, little boys, they want to be hanging around the men at the work site. So they brought him to me, and he was very dirty because he'd been playing in the dirt. So the first thing you do, of course, is a bath and washed it. And then I made a grated potato poultice, probably just like this for a 3-year-old. And I put it on the bottom of his foot. And then I put a sock on. I think I bandaged it, then put a sock on. And he could still fit into his crock, and off he went, very happy. Now that night my son put another one on. I think for 3 nights he put a grated potato poultice on. And on the last night, in the morning, William came to me, my son, and he said, "Mum, look at this poultice. There are little bits of fluorescent blue metal on the poultice." This potato poultice had pulled the rusty metal out of the foot and cleaned up the metal. Isn't that incredible? This little boy's not vaccinated. There's no need for a tetanus injection because tetanus will only get a hold on the body if there's a wound that is healed on the outside and hasn't healed on the inside. You put a grated potato poultice on, it will not close up until it's healed from the inside out. So we've helped a few people that have trodden on rusty nails by just grated potato poultices. And if it's still a little red and sore, I suggest doing hot and colds. Remember we looked at doing hot and colds? Do hot and cold foot baths. That takes about 10 minutes. Then put the grated potato poultice on. That's even more effective. Now you can see with this castor oil, I don't know if you can see that it's soaked out even more now. And that's why you only put it in the middle. What we're going to look at now is cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. When we look at the heart, I'll be exploring that in more detail. But cayenne pepper internally, it can ease a sore throat. It can boost your hydrochloric acid because cayenne pepper moves blood. It is a stimulant, but not a nervous system stimulant. It's a blood stimulant. And the Bible says in Leviticus 17:11, the life of the flesh is in the blood. So anything that moves blood is going to boost healing. Cayenne pepper moves blood. So you can use it internally. Not only will it help with the low hydrochloric acid, it'll also heal a stomach ulcer. Cayenne pepper, once it gets into the blood, it does 3 things. It thins the blood. Forget the warfarin. You know what warfarin is, rat poison. This is far more effective, and it won't poison you. So if you want to take it as a blood thinner, in case of something like warfarin, you would take 2 capsules 3 times a day. So it thins the blood, which means it's also a vasodilator. That means dilates the blood vessels. Number 2. Number 3, it strengthens the arterial wall. So for someone who's had a stroke or heart attack, excellent herb for that.
What's number 3?
It strengthens the arterial wall. So blood thinner, vasodilator, and strengthens the arterial wall. And you can use it externally. And it can be used if someone has lost feeling in their feet, if they have chronically cold feet, or if they have peripheral neuropathy. Peripheral neuropathy means they've lost the feeling in their feet, and it's a common side effect after chemotherapy. And you can't put cold feet into hot water. You must never do that. So what do you do with cold feet? You could put it into warm water, but not hot water. But you can apply cayenne pepper compresses to the soles of the feet. To do this, I have folded over that cling wrap, and I've got kitchen paper there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dot the kitchen paper with olive oil, and I find it much easier just to dot it. If I pour the olive oil on, then there can be too much olive oil, and then the olive oil leaks everywhere, and that's no fun. I'm a lady that loves nice linen, and I don't like having my sheets stained. So I'm cautious with the way I do my poultices. And I had a young girl do this poultice one day, and olive oil leaked everywhere. It was no fun at all. So you can see what I've done there. I've just dotted it.
So it doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much. And then I'm going to sprinkle the cayenne pepper onto that. Now I have to apologise for this. Can you believe we forgot the cayenne pepper? So I'm using paprika. And I wasn't going to tell you, but it doesn't look like cayenne pepper. But can you see what's happened there? It's stuck to the little dots. And what I usually do is put a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper per kitchen paper. So you do this to both feet. And what we find that by morning, for someone who's got cold feet, by morning the feet are warm. And for someone who's got peripheral neuropathy, by morning they're starting to feel pins and needles. That's incredible. And if they don't, maybe they'll feel that after the 2nd or the 3rd time. If I were to do this to my feet, by morning my feet would feel like they're on fire. I don't have cold feet because I never let my feet get cold. I like wearing boots in the winter because under boots you can wear woolen socks and woolen leggings. Perfect health requires perfect circulation, and perfect circulation means my feet are the same temperature as the rest of my body. Now one day I was visiting a lady with peripheral neuropathy. She was a lady in her 80s. So I made her 6 of these. That's enough for 3 nights. So I made it like this, and I just folded it over like that and put it in a bag for her, so then she could use it.
How much you can make internally?
How much can you take internally? Sky's the limit. It's as much as you can handle. In the book Jethro Kloss's book called Back to Eden, he devotes half a page to every herb, 10 pages to cayenne pepper. And he quotes 2 doctors in his report on cayenne pepper. One doctor says it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper. And another doctor said you cannot ever cause a lesion. That means it will never cause a sore or a wound. It's a remarkable herb.
I do have a teaspoon every morning.
You have a teaspoon every morning? Great. Half a teaspoon? Great.
Barbara, is that a half teaspoon to the whole poultice, all those dots? Or is it
Yeah. More if you want.
And it goes directly on the skin.
It grows directly on the skin, that's right. Now, all the poultices we've looked at so far, you discard once you've used them, except for the castor oil. Because the castor oil is not drawing anything into it, it's just a vehicle holding the oil to go into you. So that's why we call this one a compress, because it can be reused again and again. And so you just fold it over like that, put it into a little bag, and the next night you use it again. And sometimes every 3 nights you might put a little bit more on. You'll get to feel that it's starting to dry out a bit. Now we're going to have a look at charcoal. This is activated charcoal powder. And charcoal absorbs and neutralizes poisons. And the word for that is adsorb. So what adsorb refers to, is it refers to the fact that charcoal can absorb or take into itself and neutralize the poison. I think that's a UE. Neutralize. There's nothing else that'll do that. So it's a remarkable substance. In fact, NASA use it in outer space to filter their water. They use it in outer space to filter their air. They use charcoal to filter blood before dialysis. If someone has an overdose and goes to emergency, they're given a dose of charcoal because the charcoal will absorb and neutralize the poison. And that explains the word adsorb. So you can use it internally. Many people, if they're travelling to Asian countries, will travel with charcoal or charcoal tablets, because if they get diarrhea or vomiting, they'll take charcoal. And it'll absorb and absorb and neutralise the poison. And once it's absorbed the poison, that poison cannot hurt you. It'll travel through your gut and be out. So you can use it internally and you can use it externally. Why would you use it externally? You use it externally for, again, any poison. So you would use it for a spider bite, a snake bite, bee sting, wasp bite. So any cases of poisoning you can use it, but you can also use it if someone's got a upset in their intestines. You can make a charcoal poultice and it'll penetrate through and bring relief. You can also use it on a congested chest. Pink eye, you could also put a charcoal poultice on pink eye. So you can see that sometimes if you've got a problem, you could try this poultice one night, this poultice another night, that poultice another night. And remember what we do when we're treating ourselves or someone else. You look at history, find out how this happened, why they're in this situation. Then you treat the symptoms. Because the symptoms is the body saying, I need help right here. And then very important part of all this is the response. Is the body saying, don't do that again? Or is the body saying, I like that, please do that again? That's what you're watching. What's your body saying to you? Your body can tell you what no one can tell you. So charcoal, when you mix charcoal with water, it's like mixing dirt and water. Doesn't mix very well. And so what we usually do is mix together charcoal with chia seed because it makes a nice gel, or ground flaxseed makes a nice gel, or you could boil up the whole seed in a bit of water and that goes like a nice gel. Psyllium. And as we were preparing this, because this isn't our home, it's not my home, we forgot any of those. So if you don't have any of those, what you can use is just flour. Because flour and water together will make a bit of a paste. So that's what we're going to use. We're just going to use some flour. And you usually do equal charcoal, and you never drop this. So I'm being very careful. And then before you do anything else, you securely put the lid back on. So I'm going to show you how you can make a poultice with this. So you mix that together, and again we're mostly using it for the charcoal, but we've just used something as a binding agent. So because our time is up, while I'm demonstrating this, can we take some questions? We'll wait for the microphone.
Do you have anything that would help with the itch from a poison oak rash?
Poison oak and poison ivy. You're talking to an Aussie here who doesn't know anything about that sort of stuff. But someone told me that poison ivy, you're best to wash with soap water. I don't know. You could try this, but I find one of the best things for any itch is just ice. Ice kills itch.
Would the potato poultice be appropriate for a sunburn?
No, the best thing for a sunburn is aloe vera. Every home should have a aloe vera plant. That's one of the best things for any types of burns.
I just wrote this down. When you did the onion and the honey cough syrup, how long will that keep?
Once the onion's out, it'll keep indefinitely.
Okay.
Over here. I just wanted to know, is the size of the poultice, does it need to cover the whole area? Like if you're doing the abdomen, do you need to cover the whole abdomen?
Yeah, ideally so. Ideally so. If it's a bee sting or a bite, something like that, ideally you do a bit more than the area. So I'm just showing you here. See how we've made it a bit of a paste? We do not want to drop that. So we've made a bit of a paste that's sort of smeared over it. So that's your charcoal poultice.
For the castor oil, when you said put it on your scalp, you just rub it in? Because you said that you have to, if you rub it in,
for a brain
15
tumour,
minutes.
it's a bit messy. In fact, it's very messy.
You can't put a poultice on it.
Well, if
of the
someone's
hair.
got a brain tumour, you find out what part of the skull is closest to it. And I think if someone's got a brain tumour, they don't care if it's messy. And often it's an idea to cut the hair. If the person's got beautiful long hair, you might just pull it up and apply it to that area.
But nothing to hold it.
Well, then you put plastic on it and bandage it on.
It's working. My son's just finishing up with chemo over about a year for colon cancer, and he got really bad neuropathy in his feet from the chemo. He likes spicy stuff, so I'm wondering if he's willing to do that versus the poultices. Is one's better than the other?
The poultice on the feet is best because it's targeting the area.
He has to wear special shoes right now where he loses his balance.
Well, what you do is the best time to do it is overnight. A bit hard to walk with with those poultices on your feet, so we always do it overnight.
Okay.
While they're sleeping. Now, I can see a syrup's forming. Can you see that? See that liquid? That's the syrup. Who's next?
I just wanted to say that my dad had a bleeding ulcer, and they were out in the middle of the desert, and there was no hospital, and he was in serious trouble, and my mother gave him cayenne pepper, and it went away, and he didn't have any more problems.
Yep. See, cayenne pepper in the blood will open the capillaries, but if cayenne pepper meets a bleeding vessel, it constricts it. So thank you for that story.
Yes, you were saying that cayenne pepper thins the blood, but doesn't it also clot it? Because I've heard that it's good for when you bleed too profusely.
Yeah. Well, it's explained in Psalm 104, verse 14, where the Bible says God gave herbs for the service of man. So what the herbs do, they work with the needs of the body. If there's bleeding, it'll seal it. In a thick blood, it'll thin it. So it works with the body.
Can you use the castor oil with the ginger?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Can you use the castor oil with the ginger in combination?
Could you use the castor oil and the ginger together? I guess you could.
My question would be, how long will you boil the ginger for a tea? Half an hour, 10 minutes?
I just pour boiling water on the finely grated ginger.
Oh, you have to grate it, not put chunks of ginger and boil them for a tea?
If you finely grate it, you can just pour the boiling water on. But if you have chunks of ginger, you would need to simmer it for about 10 minutes.
No more than 10 minutes, in your opinion?
It's enough.
And another question, in regards of the cough syrup, after you extract the juice to use to drink for that day, can you reuse it to put more water in there and have the juice, or you need to do again another fresh onion?
Well, you will find if you make up enough, you can make a whole jar of it. So the more you make, the more you've got.
And then you discard, and then you make a fresh for the whole week?
That ginger, well, after 24 hours, it's onion. End of the day. After 24 hours, you strain the onion out, and then that onion syrup will sit in the fridge indefinitely.
And the onion, you throw it out.
And you throw the onion out.
Because she asked you to reuse it, again, the onion with that.
Would you put charcoal poultice over like an infected wound or an abscess?
Certainly could.
So, you know how Asian foods are very spicy, so they're warning people that you should avoid spicy food and with the cayenne.
Well, it all depends what the spice is, because mustard, black pepper, and chili all irritate the lining of the gut, but cayenne pepper does not. Cayenne pepper heals and stimulates blood to the area, so depends on the spice.
For the person that said about the poison oak, we have goats and they run free in the mountain, and we get it very often because we pet them, and we just run hot water on our bodies when we take a shower, and it just
Okay, hot water on the poison oak. Okay, thank you.
And also, on any cats that you have, I have done it so many times personally, and you just pour cayenne on it, powder, and it just heals beautifully.
Yep, certainly does.
I have a question. You said that it's important to take off the onion when it's cold. I was wondering how come?
Because the cold onion can cause the ear to ache. When your ear has an ache, you don't want anything cold on it.
Okay. And then I had another question about the castor oil. Is there any place where you cannot put it? Because it sounds like you can put it anywhere. So I'm just wondering if there's a place you recommend to
No,
not put it.
you can put it anywhere.
All right.
Yeah. You said castor oil could be placed in or on the eye. And for cataracts things, what about eye floaters? Would it help that at all?
Yes, it's worth a try.
You don't know any history of that, though?
No,
Can't hurt.
no, cannot hurt.
So like after cataract surgery?
Yeah.
Would the castor oil be helpful for skin tags or moles?
Yes, the castor oil can be helpful for skin tags and moles. It can even be helpful for, skin cancers, moles, skin tags. It's worth a try.
Thank you.
Is there a certain type of castor oil that we need to use, like organic or?
Well, the best castor oil is the dark Jamaican castor oil, but that's not always easy to get. But we've been using just this one for years, and you get the results. Now, it says.
So
now.
I heard with the castor oil that you should use it from glass and not from plastic.
Probably glass is best, but we buy ours and it's just in a plastic. And it's not absorbing the plastic.
I have a finger sometimes it's stuck when I close it. I cannot open.
Trigger.
It's good. Cayenne pepper, no.
Yeah,
Ginger?
you could try ginger, you could try cayenne pepper, you could try the castor oil, you could alternate them.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's like for trigger finger, I think is what she's describing.
On your website, a long time ago, you had a printout for poultices. Do you still have that?
I don't have anything to do with our website. I don't know what they do. I'm sorry.
I was doing a little bit of research on castor oil because I wanted to put some in my eye. And what I read is you want to try to avoid hexachlorophene or something like that. That's what they extract it with. There's other ways they can extract. I don't know if they cold press it or something. And they also said organic was best. And then the other thing my friend told me, he says, when you take the onion out of the honey, you don't have to throw it away. You can eat it.
If you want to.
Barbara, can you mix cayenne pepper and slippery elm together?
I guess so.
Huh?
I guess so.
I just had a quick comment for the lady that was talking about castor oil in the eye. You can buy in the pharmacy castor oil that says USP, and that might be a little safer because it's something that's being kind of verified that you could put it in the body. Sometimes doctors would recommend it for something or other. So if you buy USP, castor oil might be a little better. And if you buy it somewhere else.
We used to be able to buy castor oil everywhere, but now you can only buy it in the chemist. And I know in Australia sometimes when people go to buy it, they're asked what they're going to do with it, because apparently they very much speak against taking it by mouth. I don't advise it by mouth because it can irritate the lining of the gut. Yeah, but I don't know, it doesn't say anything about how this is extracted. Just says castor oil.
Someone just said to me, you can get it at Walmart. You can get castor oil at Walmart. And I wanted to, someone brought up trigger finger, and you were talking about scar tissue earlier. So I'm a myofascial release therapist, and my specialty is releasing the connective tissue in the body, which is the container for everything. And with my clients that have the scar tissue, the fibroids, anything hard, hot, or tender, I often advise these poultices that I've learned about from you. The releases that I also teach people to do for themselves open the tissue to receive the remedies to an even greater degree. So you can either open the tissue with a poultice and then do a release, or vice versa, and you get more out of it. So if anyone would like to know how, just let me know. I can share.
And you might be familiar with DMSO. DMSO is a byproduct from, I think, making paper, and it can actually open to get more castor oil in, but we've been using just plain castor oil for years, and it's very effective.
If you're exposed to poison oak, you wash as quickly as possible with Phil's Naphtha soap. You wash all the clothes that you were wearing. And if you're burning brush, stay out of the smoke. The smoke is worse than if you touched the plant. Naughty stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned DMSO. I have used it on sunburns mixed with the aloe vera, and the burn is gone the next day.
Yeah.
But you never want to put DMSO on your skin by itself because it's like pins and needles, except on the bottom of your feet.
Okay, we might take one more question and then we'll call it a day.
What do you recommend for sleep apnea?
That's a whole nother subject. But I've known people to conquer their sleep apnea by taping up their mouth at night and breathing through the nose.
I just had one clarification on the if you get seasick or airsick, the ginger, what would you put a poultice on before you fly or whatever?
No, you take it by mouth. Okay, let's say a closing prayer for the day. Father in heaven, thank you so much for all these little bits and pieces that we can do to the body to bring relief and healing. And I pray for travelling mercies on the students as they travel home, and that we may be blessed with a good night's sleep, able to get up early and do our high intensity in the morning, ready for our classes tomorrow. We thank you for hearing our prayer, Father, for we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.